So it's very, very important, not just for Canada, but for the United States and NATO in general, to find an onshore supply in a safe area that can be accessed, and doesn't have to cross an ocean.
Hello, you're watching Proactive. I'm joined by Dwayne Yaretz, the CEO of North Atlantic Titanium. Dwayne, very good to meet you. For new investors, can you explain what hemoilmenite is, why titanium is so strategically important right now, and what makes Everett special?
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks for having me this morning. Yeah, hemoilmenite is basically the host rock, which hosts, in this case, the critical minerals that we're looking for. Obviously, Everett in northern Quebec being our primary project. That host rock, that hemoilmenite, is hosting both the titanium and the vanadium, and actually a host of other minerals as well, which we can talk about in a moment. Obviously, it's called critical minerals in the world because it is critical. In fact, to run an economy, you need these elements for all sorts of things, not the least of which in times of war, military equipment, that sort of thing.
The Quorum study confirmed very low impurity levels and vanadium consistently hosted in the hemoilmenite. In plain terms, Dwayne, what does that mean for processing this material?
Well, that's critically important. As you can well imagine, in this industry, it's critical to do drilling and get some intersections and show some good results. That's critical. But what you often don't see, and certainly in the case of titanium projects, where you're having the metallurgy done concurrent to the exploration. We have a lot of historical data, so we're relying on that as well. But the CREM study proves to us that, in fact, the ore that's at the Everett site is in fact of high quality, extremely high quality at that. We have extremely low magnesium at 1.4, at 0.4%, excuse me, 0.4, whereas typical mine might be 2 to 6%, and you do not want magnesium in your ilmenite. Manganese, we're at 0.02, again, very, very significantly lower than most resources out there. Aluminum, very low. Chromium, undetectable. What that means, to answer your question, is that the processing of the ilmenite then becomes much cheaper and much easier. You also have other things like the grain size, and how much crushing then would be needed as a result of the grain size. The grain size is large, which means that less crushing means less expensive. So it's all weighed in to be an extremely good a good resource.
You're mobilizing for field work across a large area, averaging 14% titanium dioxide. What are you hoping to confirm, and what would strong results mean for the path to a maiden resource?
Well, there's already been 34 drill holes in the property. The property's been around since probably for about 70 years. And the reason why the opportunity came to us in the first place is because those earlier results, both drill results, surface samples, all of the above that had been done over the course of 50, 60, 70 years, had been using a test that didn't have good recovery of both the titanium and the vanadium. So what we're looking to do now is to confirm what was done in a 1972 report that identifies 234 million tons in that northern area of our anomaly. So we're hoping to firm that up over the course of the next, say, 6 to 12 months.
Apart from titanium and vanadium, iron and phosphate are also potential co-products. How important are those additional revenue streams, and which one excites you most beyond titanium?
Mm-hmm. Well, you're right. There's revenue streams from all of the above, which of course spreads out any risk to any one element. Obviously, titanium is the main event, and that's going to be very, very interesting in terms of a global scale. We can talk about that later. But I would say, obviously, titanium, as I said, being the main event, but vanadium at 0.9% vanadium, that puts us in the league of virtually a standalone vanadium mine, if in fact we can prove up that consistently, which we believe we can. Given it's a hard rock situation and the numbers thus far have been extremely consistent, we believe that we can get that through. So vanadium is extremely interesting. Phosphate is very needed, and the phosphate content alone, back the napkin calculation sort of thing, might indicate that mining and processing will be covered just by the phosphate part of the resource. So if that's the case, then your other elements are basically free.
Dwayne, you're talking about reshoring Western titanium production and supporting defense readiness. How are those geopolitical tailwinds changing the conversations you're having with partners and also governments in Canada?
Well, actually, it's interesting you should say, because Rio Tinto's Lacteo resource, which is only 3 kilometers from us, has been operating for about 75 years now. And I don't know how much resource they have left, but at some point that's going to end. And that mine is significant. It's the largest in the world. They supply 19% of the global supply, and nobody knows the actual number. Maybe Rio Tinto doesn't even know the number, but it's probably 60 or 80% of the North American and or NATO supply. The other supplies are coming from China, from Norway, Russia, and Ukraine. And you can imagine, the ones I've just listed, not readily available in times of war, and certainly even just the geopolitical nature. So it's very, very important, not just for Canada, but for the United States and NATO in general, to find an onshore supply in a safe area that can be accessed, and doesn't have to cross an ocean. So it's extremely important, and thus we have already, as you know, received funding from the provincial government to the tune of $320,000 for that initial metallurgical survey. So we have more coming down the pipe here. So it's all governments have recognized these elements as being critical, thus the name.
Well, Dwayne, I hope you'll keep us updated with progress on the project. Thank you very much for your time today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Dwayne Yaretz, the CEO of North Atlantic Titanium.